The night was still when Gary Drayton stepped back onto the soft ground of Oak Island. The sky above him was dark, with only a few stars showing through the thin clouds drifting across the moon. The cold air touched his face, but he barely noticed it. He was focused on one thing, and one thing only: the strange glint he had seen the night before. Something that did not belong on the forest floor. Something that had stayed in his mind all night, refusing to let him sleep. Gary had searched for treasure all over the world. He had dug in deserts, beaches, forgotten towns, and remote islands. He had found coins, relics, tools, weapons, and things many people believed were lost forever. But Oak Island was never the same as other places. The island had a strange way of hiding things. It showed you a clue only once. If you missed it, the island could swallow it again for years, sometimes forever. Gary knew that better than anyone. As he walked through the trees, his boots pressed into the wet soil. The branches above him moved slightly in the cold wind. He moved slowly, listening to every sound around him. A long time working on Oak Island had taught him that silence was never empty here. Sometimes the island whispered. Sometimes the island pushed back. And sometimes it revealed something no one expected. He stepped into a patch of moonlight, and the moment his boot touched the ground, he heard a sound he had never heard in this exact place before. A sharp metallic ping rang out under his heel. Clear, crisp, direct. A sound that did not belong to nature. A sound that was not rock, not wood, not fallen tools. Gary froze. He lifted his foot and stepped back slowly. The sound replayed in his mind. Metallic, solid, something buried, something deep, something hidden. He crouched down and brushed the soil with his gloved hand, moving softly, trained from years of careful digging. He reached for his detector, turned it on, and swept it across the patch of ground. The moment the coil passed over the soil, the detector screamed with readings so strong that the scream nearly washed out. Numbers shot upward, far beyond anything he expected to see here. Gary blinked, thinking at first that the detector was glitching. But when he checked the calibration, everything was normal. The signal was real, strong, concentrated, deep. He frowned. Readings like this did not come from random junk. They didn't come from tools or lost scraps or old iron. Readings like this came from something made with purpose, something hidden, something that someone wanted to protect. His breath slowed. The air around him felt different. The trees seemed to lean in. The whole forest grew still, as if the island itself wanted him to pay attention. Gary knelt down and began moving the soil with his hand. The dirt shifted easily, almost too easily, and within minutes he noticed something strange. A line. A straight line. Nature does not make perfect lines. People do. Builders do. Engineers do. Someone had cut into the ground here long before Gary's time, and they had done it with skill. He tapped the ground again and heard a hollow echo. Not the sound of solid earth. This was wood beneath soil. Something covered. Something sealed. Something someone had buried carefully and never meant to expose again. Gary pulled out a small pry bar and worked it beneath the seam. The soil crumbled away, revealing timber. The wood was old, far older than any colonial work he had ever studied. It did not crumble. It did not rot. It felt unnaturally preserved, as if coated with something ancient that modern builders no longer used. Gary leaned closer, scraping the dirt from the surface of the timber. His light caught something carved into the wood. At first, it looked like scratches, but when he brushed the surface clean, his pulse jumped. These were not random marks. These were symbols, crosses, angles, patterns carved with care. He touched the shapes with his fingertips, and a memory pushed into his mind. He had seen these before, Not here on Oak Island, not anywhere near North America. He had seen them on medieval relics he studied years ago in Spain. Symbols tied to the Knights Templar. Symbols carved into vaults meant to hold gold, relics, sacred items, and guarded secrets. His breath caught. What were Templar symbols carved into timbers hidden beneath Oak Island? Gary lifted the timber panel carefully. The wood shifted, revealing a deep black space beneath it. A void, a shaft, a narrow tunnel descending into darkness. It wasn't rough, it wasn't sloppy. It was built with intention, measured with skill, aligned with knowledge far older than anything used in colonial times. He shined his flashlight down into the narrow hole. The beam caught more timber supports lining the walls in perfect alignment. Each beam fitted into the next with precise craftsmanship. They looked almost untouched by time. No rot, no decay, no mold. He lowered himself slowly into the shaft, gripping the supports as he went. As his hand slid across the wood, he stopped again. Symbols carved down the wall, a pattern repeating, lines, crosses, and angles, forming a language he recognized, but only faintly. Medieval codes, Templar markers. He moved deeper. The shaft grew narrower, pressing close around him. The air cooled, a slight breeze brushed against his face. That breeze told him something important. Somewhere below or to the side, there was another tunnel, a hidden one. A side passage feeding air into this shaft. No random miner or colonial worker would build something like this. This was engineered. His light hit something ahead. A massive stone plug blocked the shaft, shaped like a perfect stopper. The fit was so exact that Gary could not even slide the edge of a tool between the stones. He touched the surface and felt grooves spiraling across it. Not cracks, not weathered marks. They were carved, purposeful. He had seen this exact design in Templar crypt vaults, meant to hide treasure that no invader should ever find. He brushed the base of the stone with his glove. Something shimmered, a thin layer of clay mixed with silver powder. Gary knew exactly what it was: medieval decoy clay, a trick used to confuse early treasure-seeking tools. It did not fool modern detectors, but hundreds of years ago, it would have hidden any metallic echo. He moved his thumb along the seam where the plug met the wall. Specks of something clung to his glove. Gold dust. Tiny grains caught deep in the seams, left behind centuries ago when someone sealed the chamber. His heart pounded. Someone had handled gold near this stone, a lot of gold, enough that flakes drifted and settled into the clay. He lifted his light and looked up the timber again. Something gleamed above him. Symbols carved in perfect vertical order, a constellation pattern. He recognized it instantly. Templar navigational encoding, a star map, the same kind used to mark secret vaults in Europe. This was not a random shaft. This was a vault entrance. He traced a chipped edge of one symbol. Beneath the crack, he saw gold leaf. Templar artisans used thin gold only for their highest sanctuaries, gold you could not see unless a symbol broke. A secret signature, an identity mark of the elite builders. He stepped back and examined the symbols as a whole. They formed a cipher. Numbers, dates, meaning. He followed the pattern until one number shined clear in his mind: 1347. A year tied to Templar survivors fleeing persecution. The year many believed the lost Templar fleet vanished with countless treasure on board. Gary's breath grew shallow. The story he had heard for years, the myth many dismissed, was unfolding right in front of him. The fleet did not vanish. It traveled. It carried gold, relics, sacred items, and documents across the ocean to hide them. And this shaft was one of the hiding places. He lowered himself farther. Mud shifted around his feet, and something sharp brushed against his boot. He knelt and dug carefully. When he lifted the object, he held a fragment of a rusted hinge, but the design was not Elonial. It was Spanish, Iberian, the kind of hinge used on crates that carried valuable cargo. He dug again and found something silver, a plate shard, smooth, decorated, engraved with patterns linked to Spanish nobility. He stared at both pieces in his hands. Templar symbols, Spanish hinges, noble silver, gold dust. This was not one culture's treasure. This was a mixed hoard. A collection built across countries and blended together, then hidden underground for nearly 700 years. The value, just the gold alone, was worth a fortune. In today's terms, about $160 million, but the history was priceless. Gary stood still, letting the truth settle. But as he did, the ground trembled, a faint shake. Dust drifted down around him. He heard a soft, rhythmic sound, water shifting, air moving, something old coming to life. He looked up and saw fractures forming across the beams above him, thin lines, small shifts, a mechanism waking up, a trap, a medieval defense built into the shaft, a delayed trigger. Gary knew exactly what that meant. One wrong movement and the entire passage could collapse. He steadied himself, listening to the shaft breathe. He shifted his weight slowly and felt something soft beneath his boot, a pressure plate. He stepped off it instantly. The tremor eased, the air stilled, the dust settled. The trap had almost activated. Gary exhaled slowly. The builders were not just hiding treasure, they were defending it. Even after centuries, their traps still worked. Gary steadies himself inside the narrow space, letting his eyes move slowly over every mark and shadow around him. The more he looks, the clearer it becomes that this place was not built in haste. Every cut, every symbol, every beam of timber was placed with careful hands and a purpose that goes far beyond simple storage. The air is cold, but it carries a strange warmth too, almost like a quiet memory held inside the stone. Gary breathed slowly, trying to take everything in without rushing. This is the kind of moment treasure hunters dream about, a moment that feels unreal even while you are standing in it. He steps closer to the sealed chamber door, moving lightly as if afraid the ground might shift again. The grooves in the floor show wear marks, but they are not from modern boots or tools. They are from old shoes, handmade, worn by people who worked here long before the world outside even knew this island existed. Gary kneels and brushes his hand over the marks, feeling the shallow dips made by feet that walked here centuries ago. It almost feels like he can sense their presence, like echoes of workers who carried a burden so valuable they carved their story into the island itself. The stone door ahead of him looks even larger up close. The cold surface seems to absorb Gary's light, giving back only a faint, dull reflection. The bolts across the surface are aged but still strong, and the lead seal that fills the seam is hardened like iron. Gary knows one thing for sure. Anyone who built a barrier like this did not want it opened easily. This was not a simple lock.
This was a promise, a barrier meant to last forever. He moves his fingers lightly over the lead seal, feeling the rough lines where the metal cooled in place. He imagines men pouring it, sealing the chamber shut, closing it with finality, knowing they might never see it opened again. There is something heavy about that idea, something emotional. These builders didn't only hide treasure, they hid a story, a past, a truth they believed needed protection. Gary steps back and turns his light toward the gallery walls again. The carvings tell more than a simple tale. The knights carved into the stone carry their loads with bent backs, showing the weight of whatever they brought here. The chests carved into the wall are not small boxes. They are large, heavy crates, the kind used to move serious treasure. Gold, relics, documents, plates, bars, scrolls tied with seals. These carvings weren't made to impress, they were made to warn. They were made to remind anyone who entered that this was not a place for greed. This was a place of purpose. Gary takes another slow breath and scans the ceiling. The timber beams above him show age, but they are still solid, locked into the stone with careful joints. The old builders understood pressure and weight far better than he expected. These beams were shaped by hand tools, carved and set with calculations made from experience, not machines. Every angle matches old European vault designs that Gary studied over the years. Seeing it here beneath Oak Island feels unreal. A faint vibration runs through the beam, soft but noticeable. Gary freezes and waits. The vibration is small, not dangerous yet, but enough to remind him that this place is alive. The old traps and tunnels still breathe. They shift with temperature, pressure, and movement. He listens until the vibration fades, then continues. His eyes catch on something near the floor on the left side of the chamber. A small piece of metal lies half buried in the sediment. He crouches again, scooping away dirt with careful fingers. A faint shape begins to show itself, a small metal plate, no bigger than a palm. He lifts it slowly, brushing the dust away. The plate reveals an engraving, a curved pattern that matches designs used in old Spanish families. The plate must have been part of a larger object once, maybe a chest decoration or a piece of armor. Gary turns it over, noticing the faint remains of gold leaf along the edges, a decorative touch added by skilled hands long ago. The plate is worn and cracked, but the story it carries is clear. More proof that whoever came here brought items from across the sea, items that did not belong in North America in the 1300s. He sets the plate aside gently and looks deeper into the sediment. More fragments wait there, hidden under layers of age. He brushes away the dirt and uncovers a thin piece of pottery with painted lines. The pattern is delicate, but still recognizable. It is Mediterranean. The color, the design, the glaze, none of it matches colonial pottery. This was carried here on purpose. Not traded, not lost, delivered. Gary places the shard beside the plate, his mind fitting pieces together like a puzzle. Every item is a voice from the past, a small whisper telling him what happened here. These people didn't travel lightly. They came with purpose, carrying items that mattered deeply, not only in value, but in meaning. The idea makes Gary feel a strong mix of excitement and respect. He stands and returns his focus to the arrow carved into the stone.
Wall earlier. The direction is intentional. The arrow lines up cleanly with the old shoreline he knows well, a place where strange marks and old wooden remains were found decades ago. Many believed it was nothing more than an old dock or natural formation. Now, Gary sees it differently. The arrow points to that exact place. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't an accident. It was a landing site, a place where ships from across the ocean anchored quietly, away from the world, bringing men who carried their most precious secrets. Gary runs his fingers along the arrow's lines. The stone around it is smooth, worn by time. The arrow was not a quick carving. It took effort. It was meant to last. It was meant to guide. He steps back, thinking about the builders. They did not come here randomly. They knew the land, the tides, the hidden coves. They chose this island because it gave them everything they needed: privacy, shelter, natural defenses, and ways to mislead anyone who came after them. They built the money pit not to protect the treasure, but to distract from the real vault. They created traps, tunnels, and decoys to keep people busy for centuries. And now Gary stands in the real place, the heart of it all. A vault untouched by any treasure hunter before him. He moves slowly through the chamber again, checking the walls and floor for more signs. Near a corner, he sees something small and dark. He crouches and picks it up. It is a coin, its surface worn but still showing a faded crest. The coin's metal is almost black with age, but the design is unmistakable.
It is not colonial. It is not modern. It is from the medieval period, minted long before Europeans settled this region. Gary holds the coin close to his light, feeling the chill of its surface. A coin like this didn't travel lightly. It wasn't dropped by accident. It belonged to someone who worked here, someone who helped build this very shaft. Maybe it slipped from a pocket during long hours of labor. Maybe it was left intentionally as a sign for anyone who truly understood. Whatever the reason, the coin is clear proof that this place holds a history that reaches far beyond local legends. He puts the coin safely in a small pouch and continues deeper. The deeper he goes, the more everything seems to connect. The carvings, the relics, the gold dust, the Spanish hinge, the pottery, the arrow, the silver clay, the stone plug. Every detail points to the same truth. This chamber is the core of everything Oak Island explorers have been chasing. Gary pauses and takes a deep breath. His heart pounds, but he forces calm. Emotional arousal don't belong here. Not when one wrong move could set off a trap centuries old. He thinks again about the water system. The faint hiss from earlier wasn't random. It was a part of the ancient design, a warning that the system is still working. He sweeps his light along the lower walls and spots small channels carved into the stone. They're almost invisible, but the design is clear. These channels allowed water to move in controlled paths. They protected the vault from flooding while guiding floods toward intruders if triggered. Brilliant engineering for its time, and still dangerous now. Gary traces the line of one channel with his fingertip. The stone is slick, smoother than the walls around it. Water passed through here many times, maybe during storms, maybe triggered by early explorers. But somehow this vault stayed safe, untouched. He studies the stone plug again, the one blocking the passage ahead. Now that he is calmer, he sees even more details. The grooves carved across the surface connect like a puzzle. He recognizes them as part of an alignment system. The plug was not simply dropped in place. It was locked in. Someone slid it into position carefully, using a method only the builders understood. On the side of the plug is a thin marking that Gary almost missed earlier. He kneels and examines it. It is a faded symbol, a cross with uneven arms. He knows the design. It is an old Templar mark, used to signal a final barrier. Seeing it here sends a chill down his spine. The builders did everything they could to warn future guardians and to halt intruders who did not belong. Gary steps back and studies the entire chamber with new understanding. He sees not only engineering, but intention. These men knew how to hide something better than anyone else on Earth at the time, and they knew how to make sure the secret stayed hidden long after they were gone. He walks toward a narrow ledge near the wall and sits down carefully, letting the weight of the moment settle in his chest. He knows what this chamber means. It means the stories, the legends, the clues left behind were not legends at all. They were real. They were true. Everything researchers guessed at, everything treasure hunters hoped for, it all leads here. The vault behind the plug holds something massive. Gold bars, artifacts, relics, documents, chests filled with priceless history. But more than that, it holds truth. A truth hidden for centuries. Gary stays quiet for a few minutes, listening to the soft hum of the chamber. The air feels thick with age, but also alive. After a while, he stands again and continues exploring the outer chamber, making sure he understands every part of it before calling the team. Near the far wall, he sees a small crack in the stone. Not from damage, from purpose. He slides his hand along it and realizes the crack follows a pattern. It's another alignment marker, part of the unlocking method. These builders did not rely on one seal. They created layers of signs that only someone patient enough and cautious enough would see. Gary is exactly that kind of person.
He begins to trace the chamber again, marking the positions of symbols, crosses, cuts, and strange features in the stone. He works slowly, moving from floor to ceiling, making sure